I have been saying that I want to make a video defending Transformers Energon for literally years now, but that video has never seen the light of day. Why is that, you might ask? That's because I always felt that if I'm going to go out there and take such a controversial position, that video better be the closest to perfect that I can get. It would be so easy for someone to look at the quality of the video and say, "Wow, you're so stupid you can't even make a video right. Why should I listen to what you have to say about Transformers Energon?" Because of the anxiety I had over making that video perfect, I would start to make the video but then give up out of fear of it not being good enough. I've discovered that I do best when I work on projects in one fell swoop, and if it takes more than, say, 3 days to do one video, I usually get burnout and move on to a different video. And so, even though my script for defending Transformers Energon was written and touched up years ago, the video has never seen the light of day because the editing process was just too much for me. As of late, I've had a change in philosophy in video making, and I realize that I need to get good ideas out there, whether or not the video itself is perfect. In a world where even the most simple YouTuber is trying to put intensive edits in his or her video, editing has somehow fallen in importance. YouTube, at least the corner of YouTube I watch, has gone through a complete cycle in video editing versus video content, and putting out and saying new and interesting things has risen in priority over having rice gum level editing. Long ago, an anime YouTuber I watch named Digibro released a video titled KOALAS, a Loving Thesis, in which he took an anime that was hated by the anime community, KOALAS, and defended his love for the show. The video was a hit and visibly changed the dialogue on KOALAS. This is impressive, especially when you consider that the video was essentially an audio blog post on top of a Kirby game. While I don't think my writing or my points are as convincing as Digibro's when it comes to defending things we love, it did open my eyes as to how getting your opinion and point out there is important, with the presentation of it maybe not as important as I originally thought. So, in looking at KOALAS, a Loving Thesis, I wondered what would happen if I did the same with my Transformers Energon analysis, and I realized the results would frankly be the same. If you listened to my points and agreed, you would agree. The type of person who would not watch or agree with a video purely because of the editing and not because of the content is not the type of person who would understand my points either. And so, with various factors at play here, such as the desire to get my opinion on my favorite Transformers series out there, I have decided to follow Digibro in a similar vein for this video. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to present to you Transformers Energon, a Loving Thesis. It has been over 14 years since Transformers Energon aired on television. As you know from my How I Got Into Transformers video, I got into Transformers through Transformers Energon's prequel, Transformers Armada. However, I only really caught the end of Armada. Transformers Energon was the first Transformers series I got into from the beginning and saw through to the end. One look at my collection and you can tell that Transformers Energon had a big impact on me as a kid, as a significant portion of that collection is made up of Energon toys. Now, in the fan community, Transformers Energon has become the most loathed and most hated Transformers series out there. However, I think you guys know by now that I may as well be the king of not sharing the same opinions of the, quote, fandom. I absolutely love Transformers Energon for the same reason, quote, G1ers love the Generation 1 cartoon. Nostalgia. In the past, I used to say, I enjoyed Transformers Energon even though it was objectively bad. I've kinda had a philosophy change over this because the implication of saying that something is objectively bad implies that something can be an objectively bad or good thing overall, which is ridiculous. The better way for me to phrase my feelings on Transformers Energon is that I enjoy Transformers Energon even though the consensus is that it's bad. Objectively bad and objectively good does not exist. We only have the consensus. And if there is an overwhelming viewpoint of the consensus, it would be counterproductive for people with differing opinions to be silent. The point of a consensus is to hear all voices, and those in the small minority can still shift the Overton window. This isn't going to be some, quote, objective review or analysis. I don't really plan on pointing out the show's flaws like animation, repetitiveness, plot inconsistencies, or voice acting. After all, those points have been talked to the ground already, even though other Transformers shows are just as bad, if not worse, in these categories, but are still put on a pedestal by the, quote, community just because it came, quote, first. Ultimately, this video is just a fan gushing about points I really liked about the Transformers Energon series as a kid, and to let other Transformers Energon fans out there know that they're not alone. If there's anything I love in science fiction, it's the sense of progression. I hate it when a work of serial fiction is caught in the same status quo forever. Peter Parker has been Spider-Man for decades. Batman has been Bruce Wayne for decades. Sure, there have been small periods where someone else took the mantle, but for the most part, much of the main comic universes have stayed in a generally stagnant status quo forever. Transformers is a franchise just like that, where the Autobots are always fighting the Decepticons and nothing ever changes. Transformers Energon comes from an interesting place, as an entire 52-episode series of events took place before it, which culminated in the death of Megatron, Optimus Prime being lost in space, and Unicron, the mightiest of the Cybertronians' foes, being destroyed. All the while, humanity had become aware of the existence of Cybertronians after going through most of the show without realizing it. The Autobots and Decepticons have to learn to work together without their leaders and rebuild Cybertron while establishing proper diplomatic ties with Earth. In comes Transformers Energon, where Earth has united under the flag of the Earth Federation. Cooperation between Cybertronians and humans have led to an extremely technologically advanced society with the capability to open up space bridges, create planet-wide defense grids, colonies on the Moon, Mars, and asteroids, and so on. The Autobots and Decepticons work together side by side, and we get to see how some of the most dangerous Decepticons from Armada are dealing with an Autobot victory, often working manual jobs or serving as security. Just like before the war, the Cybertronians are learning that they are all one species and should work together, old loyalties aside. Optimus Prime is in charge of the entirety of the Cybertronian race. There are other ways the show conveys that time has passed. Hotshot, once the brash and young type Autobot from Armada, is now a proper officer with maturity and leadership skills, which is juxtaposed against Ironhide, a seemingly young bot who might not have even experienced the war. Ask yourself, how should Transformers end? And I'm not saying how should a specific continuity end, but how should Transformers as a conceptual series end? There are two main parts of Transformers: the Autobot-Decepticon War, and the Autobots and Decepticons being stuck on Earth, only keeping their war secret from the humans because of their disguises. I think the natural ending for the Transformers is for the Autobots to defeat the Decepticons, while also having humanity learn about the Transformers hiding amongst their midst. Transformers Energon is the first real attempt at developing a world that is the next step in the conceptualization of the Transformers story. Sure, there have been times in previous series where the war ends or humanity learns about the Transformers and technology is shared, but none of them ever properly come about at once. Beast Wars, for example, imagines a world where the Transformers suddenly decide to minimize their size and turn into animals. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Beast Wars, but when you take the base concept of Transformers, consider how it should end, and then consider the world after Transformers ends, them all of a sudden becoming smaller beast formers isn't really the natural conclusion. Transformers Energon shakes things up for this proper post-Transformers world by introducing a third faction, the enigmatic Alpha Q, who launches attacks on Earth and Earth's colonies for the Earth Federation's Energon reserves in order to revive Unicron. Alpha Q's story is told piecemeal throughout the entirety of the series, and viewers won't learn the full story until about halfway through the 52-episode series. This adds to Alpha Q's mystery and keeps the viewers in the dark just as much as the main characters of the show. Ultimately, Alpha Q came from a planet that Unicron destroyed. Ever since then, Alpha Q has been living inside Unicron trying to find a way to revive him so that his planet can be reborn. After all, Unicron is a god, and what Unicron destroys, he can recreate again if he's controlled by Alpha Q. At the beginning of the show, Alpha Q seems like a type of Neo-Decepticon, recruiting dispossessed Decepticons who have grown tired of the Autobot-ruled post-war Cybertronian society. However, he's only using the Decepticons to this end, as he distrusts the Autobots. However, once the Autobots and Alpha Q get to know each other better via the human Kicker, Alpha Q and the Autobots are able to join forces. We'll get to Kicker later. In Transformers Armada, Megatron dies by being sucked into Unicron, and in Transformers Energon, it is revealed that Megatron's body is fused inside Unicron, kinda like a parasite, and every time Alpha Q loads Unicron up with Energon collected from Earth, Megatron begins funneling it to himself, allowing him to be reborn and take back command of the Decepticons from Alpha Q, even asserting his dominance over Scorponok, one of Alpha Q's lieutenants, who was serving as a liaison between Alpha Q and the Decepticon recruits. The return of Megatron is a deeply emotional and frightening affair, because as soon as Megatron's back, he begins his assault on Earth, bringing Hotshot, a major character from the previous series, close to death. Megatron's return also throws a wrench into the post-war society, as Decepticons living under Autobot rule now hear the rumors that Megatron has returned, and we really see a commentary on the strength of alliances and loyalty. This is really shown through the character of Demolisher, a Decepticon who was high in the ranks back during Armada. He had been serving as a security guard on Ocean City, one of the main hubs of diplomacy between the Autobots and the Earth Federation. Back when Alpha Q was using the Decepticons to gather Energon, many of his former comrades joined Alpha Q and were under the impression that they could revive Megatron, causing Demolisher to have a crisis of loyalty during battles over whether or not he was being true to himself as a loyal Decepticon. When Megatron attacks Ocean City after his return, Megatron meets Demolisher face to face and gives him an ultimatum, to decide on which side he's on. Demolisher could open the gate for Megatron, which would lead to the Decepticons destroying the Autobots Demolisher had spent the last 10 years working alongside of, or he could open fire on Megatron, a commander he loved and followed loyally for countless years. Demolisher's choice is one of my favorite scenes in the series. Having spent so much time inside Unicron, Megatron has become driven to reviving the massive monster that had brought so much destruction to his homeworld, likely being influenced by the Chaos Bringer in some way, shape, or form. The show from that point on follows Megatron's mad quest to revive Unicron to destroy Cybertron and the Autobots, slowly losing himself in the process. The Unicron trilogy itself forms a nice little arc with Megatron. In Armada, Megatron had a much more brothers-in-arms relationship with his soldiers. By the time Energon comes around, Megatron has been influenced by Unicron, and he is losing himself. And by the time Energon's sequel Cybertron comes around, Megatron has become so far gone that he seeks to destroy the very fabric of reality itself, with no relationship of camaraderie with his soldiers. In the end, all of Megatron's troops abandon him. A lot of people like to complain about the use of Unicron in Transformers Energon, and the creation of Unicron fatigue. I disagree. Unicron is part of the natural conclusion of any Transformers series, as he was in Transformers Armada. However, as I've expressed previously, Transformers Energon takes the concept of Transformers and moves beyond it. As I've described before, it is very much a post-Transformers series. Taking the concept of what a post-Transformers world is would very much require the use of Unicron, a key part to ending Transformers and tying it into Megatron's unhealthy obsession with power as a tyrant is in line with what would happen when you look at a character's motivations from not only the previous series, but what makes Megatron Megatron on the fundamental level. On top of that, my first proper Transformers toy was Unicron, and it quickly became my favorite toy. For a long time, while Energon was running, Unicron was my only Transformers toy. The first episode of Transformers I ever watched was an episode of Transformers Armada, where Unicron was the key opponent, and I recognized that my favorite toy was on the TV, which blew my mind. I began to get into Transformers from that point on, focusing on learning as much about Unicron as I could. After a few episodes from Armada, my mom decided to rent Transformers the movie from Blockbuster, since I had a cousin that was a Transformers fan back in the 80s, and she wanted to see if I would be as into the 80s Transformers as I was the Armada Transformers. The very first scene of Transformers the movie is Unicron destroying a planet. The first proper source of Transformers information I've ever read was Transformers The Ultimate Guide, which talked about Unicron, the 13, Primus, and multiversal singularities. Because of how I got into Transformers, those things were what Transformers was to me, even more than Autobots fighting Decepticons, robots turning into cars, or anything else. To me, Transformers was always about the cosmic multiversal struggle between Unicron and Primus. So again, Transformers Energon's strong focus on Unicron and the introduction of Primus in the series just seemed only logical to me. And even then, the stakes of Transformers Energon continued to get bigger and bigger. In this series alone, the fabric of reality is torn, a parallel universe is created, whole planets are taken through space bridges, and Cybertron goes from being a thriving post-war society to an almost Walking Dead-esque apocalypse, to the entire planet being gassed, to the entire planet traveling through space like a ship. Transformers Energon does not hold back its punches. While Transformers will always be about Earth and Cybertron, as a science fiction story, Transformers has the chance to explore the stars, and Transformers Energon really worked on the Space Odyssey portion of Transformers while still managing to give adequate and unique time to Cybertron and Earth, which is something I really love about the series. I could go into depth about a lot of the characters in this series and analyze each one in detail, but I don't really want to spend the time on it. But Transformers Energon has so many interesting characters in it, including Rodimus, not as a successor to Optimus Prime, but as a foil character. Rodimus is an Optimus who has lost all sense of hope and optimism. Ironhide shows character progression from the rookie of the team to an officer who matures through having to lose his soldiers. Kicker Jones is a character everyone seems to hate, but when I see the character of Kicker, I think he's one of the best examples of human characters in Transformers fiction. Because of the environment he grew up in, Kicker is much more suited to taking care of himself in this post-Transformers world, equipped with armor and weaponry, and he also helps carry on the story due to his Energon sensing powers gifted to him by Primus, and that's all well and good, but the best part of Kicker is what the character of Kicker represents in the conceptualized post-Transformers world. Kicker represents humanity and Cybertronian-human relations in a post-Transformers world. Kicker fears the Transformers in his early life and becomes hostile towards them as he ages. Countless times in Transformers media, humanity is scared of the Transformers before trying to find a way to counteract them. Humanity isn't used to not being top of the food chain, and the discovery of Transformers threatens that. However, in a post-Transformers world, Kicker represents the fact that humanity needs to get over its fears and needs to work together with the Cybertronians as equals. Not only do we see Kicker warm up to the Transformers and mature himself in the process, as juxtaposed to the other wonderful human character of Misha, but we also see the next natural progression in the human-Cybertronian relationship. Using the human-Cybertronian relationship to make other aliens in the galaxy come to accept friendly relations and cooperation alongside the Transformers after the war is done. Now, for a character like Starscream and Megatron, their role in Transformers Energon really only makes sense with the full context of the Unicron trilogy, so I won't be talking about why I like them in Energon as a vacuum. However, there is one more thing I want to talk about in relation to the characters, the overall themes of Transformers Energon and why they appeal to me. In short, the overall themes of Transformers Energon are selfless devotion and loyalty to the group, and being at peace with your in-group. Now, this is a video about Transformers Energon, so I really don't want to get into Eastern philosophy and culture too much, but in understanding a work, you must understand the culture from which the work was produced. Transformers Energon is a Japanese show. In Japanese culture, there is the concept of uchi and soto, the in-group and the out-group. And in the cultural context, being at peace and equilibrium with the uchi, the in-group, is a very important virtue. It is commonly said in English that Japanese culture values the collective over the individual, and while it's a bit more nuanced than that, for the purposes of a video ranting about Transformers Energon, it'll have to do. To me personally, loyalty is the most important virtue anyone can have, and it is also important to be one with the in-group, and Energon has this theme in spades. This is why Energon appeals to me more than, say, Transformers Armada, with the theme of not everything being as it seems, because I'm not really a conspiracy type of person. Energon appeals more to me than Transformers Cybertron, with its theme of not being afraid to face the unknown, seeing as I'm not really a risk-taker either. So how does Transformers Energon illustrate its theme? Through characters. Inferno. Inferno is a loyal Autobot soldier who begins to be reprogrammed by Megatron to become a Decepticon. Rather than let the Decepticon programming overtake him, Inferno decides to throw himself into a sun. Alpha Q is the sole survivor of his planet, and is willing to do everything to bring back his planet, even if it means ripping a hole in the fabric of reality, or dying himself. His desperate struggle is only highlighted by the reveal that Scorponok isn't actually the real Scorponok. The real Scorponok died on Alpha Q's planet, and the Scorponok we know is just a copy Alpha Q built from a wandering Decepticon spark he found inside Unicron, a spark which likely belongs to Thrust, the traitor from Transformers Armada. Alpha Q's devotion to his home and to Scorponok hurts more when Megatron reprograms Scorponok to only follow his orders. The line delivery of "My one and only leader is Megatron," spoken by Scorponok, is a line that haunts me to this day. However, by the end of the show, Scorponok breaks through the conditioning and gives the last bit of his life to help Optimus Prime's plan to defeat Galvatron. We've already talked about him, but Demolisher's story is one of loyalty and identity, as he finally reasons with himself that he is, and always has been, a Decepticon, and he eventually dies for the sake of Megatron. Heck, the very end of the show is illustrative of this. Optimus Prime has his entire in-group with him when he faces Galvatron, while Galvatron is alone, facing his own demons. Ultimately, Galvatron throws himself into a sun. Transformers Energon really likes throwing people into suns, and Energon gives us a cautionary tale of giving selfless devotion to those not worthy of it, as Starscream and Mirage follow Galvatron into the sun, while Snowcat and Demolisher stay behind, lost without purpose. The show illustrates the importance of loyalty and devotion to the in-group in many more ways I could talk about for hours, like the very concept of power linking, the Super Energon pool scene where Starscream trusts Galvatron enough to walk into the pool, or in Wingsaber's quest to get revenge on Shockblast for killing his partner, or how Shockblast's hatred for the in-group ends up with him dying, only for his brother working with the in-group of family to seek revenge against Megatron. Or how Superion Maximus's brother's ghost popped up at the end to save him, or how Megatron is always used as a cautionary tale as he reprograms loyal soldier after loyal soldier after loyal soldier to better fit his needs, or how Starscream is valued highly by Megatron when he's not being treacherous, or, well, you get the idea. Now, if you go in and watch the scenes I've mentioned and the background music present in those scenes, you might be able to figure out what I think is the very best part of Transformers Energon that makes it shine above all other Transformers shows in my opinion. The soundtrack. The music composed for Transformers Energon, assuming it wasn't shoved in or replaced by the English dubbing team, is masterfully done in such a way that each scene has a track that fits it perfectly, or the show can let silence rest when silence is louder than music. Now, I don't have all day, so I'll end my rant here. Hopefully, for some of you, I've opened the topic of discussion, and you might become more open-minded to the idea that Transformers Energon might actually have redeeming points. However, I know full well that this is the ultimate controversial opinion in the consensus of Transformers fans, and I fully expect to be mocked, received dislikes, be talked about by Transformer Wiki admins on Allspark forums, as they tend to do whenever an outsider threatens their status quo, and so on. But for those of you who I did reach, I hope you now have a better understanding as to why Transformers Energon is my favorite Transformers series. And that's going to wrap up this video. I hope you've enjoyed. Please check out all my other videos on my channel for more nerdy content. Subscribe if you have not yet, if this video hasn't made you run away. All my social media links are in the description. And consider supporting me on Patreon. Check out the different tiers and rewards that are on my Patreon and consider supporting me there. And yeah, have a great day, ladies and gentlemen. Huge thanks to our patrons, including this month's $10 plus patron, Josh Adkins. Check out the description for more patrons and more info about how you can receive a shout out here.